How are you, everybody? It is Wednesday, hump day, and of course every Wednesday on this channel I do a series on Bulls hot takes where I feature your hot takes and my reaction to them. If you're new to the channel, I will be continuing this series every Wednesday throughout the offseason, so feel free to drop your takes in the comments below to be included in next week's video. And with that, let's get right into it. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, there were a lot of takes this week, so I'm going to try to go through these as quickly as possible, as I know sometimes I do dive pretty deep into each take. And like the past few weeks, I'll also likely do a second video to cover any remaining takes. Of course, I'm not going to be able to get to all of these, so apologies if I don't get to yours. But first up, we have Neil Shaw. Bulls should trade Zach Lavine this offseason to capitalize on his value, which I think is at the highest right now. Man, this is pretty hot, and I'm sure you're going to get some flack from folks in the comments and probably myself as well once I give my reaction to this. So here's the thing, I agree with you on some points because yes, Lavine's trade value is at an all-time high. He had the best season of his career. He was selected as an all-star. He really elevated his offensive game from more than just being a volume scorer, but actually an efficient scorer, and incorporated other elements to his game. You know, that was really what, he needed to be working on, but was started to become a more effective playmaker and even more improved defense, although still has a lot of work to do on that front. And he's also only 26. It's not like he's 32 and could be on the decline soon. So yes, his value is high, and the Bulls could likely get a lot in return for him. So I mean, I don't like it when people say that we absolutely cannot trade Zach Lavine for anything. Well, no, there is always a price for every player in the league. Like, you're telling me if the Bulls could get Coby Leonard for a straight up trade for Zach Lavine, you wouldn't do it? Or a straight trade for Giannis or even Damian Lillard? Like, yeah, you're gonna make that trade if you're the Bulls. The other team would never agree to it and the money wouldn't work, but hypothetically speaking, yes, there are trades for Zach Lavine that you would do if you're the Chicago Bulls. That being said, Lavine is one of those players that has continued to get better with every passing season, and of course, you always risk trading a potential superstar. I say potential because I do not believe, as it currently stands right now, that Lavine is on that level yet. The other thing is, as high as Lavine's trade value likely is across the league, I don't think it's as high as some might think. I think there is a hesitancy around Lavine in the sense that because his play hasn't really translated into winning, he's never seen a playoff series before. Whether that's his fault or not, that's the fact of the matter. And I think his lack of defense and high turnover rate makes him not as appealing to some franchises. Still appealing, don't get me wrong, but likely not the haul that you would want to get if you're trading for someone like Lavine's caliber. So in short, and of course, I said that this was going to be fast, and I started rambling on this one. No, I don't think it makes sense to trade Lavine, not unless you can get a significant haul for him in return, because Lavine is still a very valuable player for this organization. And I think it's clear this front office is trying to build around Lavine, given the moves that they made at the trade deadline. Yes, it's not going to, it's an ongoing debate. Is Lavine the #1 option on a contending team? Is he a superstar level player? I personally still have my doubts on that, but I think it's worth giving it this offseason to improve the roster around Lavine and see how he progresses even further. Let's stay on the same topic of Lavine, and this one comes to us from David in quotes. Lavine will become an MVP in 2 to 3 years, leading the Bulls to a deep playoff run. Here's the thing about winning the MVP in the NBA. It's incredibly dependent on your team's record, because if you look at Zach's numbers from this past season, you would think these are MVP type numbers. If you look at that alone without looking at the team's record, I mean, Zach put up better numbers at higher efficiency than Derrick Rose did in his MVP season. The difference was Rose led his team to the best record in the NBA that year. So if Lavine can maintain that same level of play that we saw from this past season, or get even better, and the front office builds a team around him that can actually start winning, and they become one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, yeah, you bet he could be an MVP, because if he's the guy leading the Bulls to a top spot in the East, averaging 28 points per game, 5 rebounds and 5 assists on over 50% shooting, yeah, that is MVP worthy. Next, we have Flinty Cloud. The Bulls should do a sign and trade with Lauri for Miles Turner. I actually would love this trade. I just don't really think the Pacers would go for it. I mean, you would likely have to throw in a second-round pick, and even then, it might not get the deal done. I love it for the Bulls because it gives them the needed shot blocking and rim protection that they need next to Vucevic, especially if they're not able to keep Tice. And Miles Turner's contract isn't that bad. I mean, it's not that great either at $18 million a year, but I would much rather give Turner that kind of money than Lauri Markkanen. Not a knock on Lauri, it's just that the Bulls need defense more than offense right now, and someone that can support Vooch in the post. Next, we've got Ryan Gray. Coby White will end up having a better career than Lonzo Ball. I know some people that are going to have a field day with this one. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, right? If Coby did have a better career than Lonzo, I would not be shocked. Now, they're very different players despite playing the same position. Coby is more of an off-the-ball volume scorer that is a bit more athletic. Lonzo is a better defender and playmaker, but also has improved his offensive game. I mean, if you stack them up side by side right now, you'd probably say that Lonzo Ball is the better player between the two because he's a better all-around player than Coby White. But Coby is also younger, only 2 years into the NBA, and has showed, in my opinion, more promise than Lonzo Ball has. So I can see this take have some validity to it because Coby's ceiling is so hard to predict with how inconsistent he has been in his first 2 seasons. Sometimes I think he's a future, star potential in the way that he plays, and then sometimes I'm kind of like, is he just going to be a career bench player? I honestly don't know. It goes back and forth all the time. Sticking on that topic, our next take from Cubs fan Coby White will eventually be an all-star. I mean, if I had to give Coby White a ceiling, meaning the best he's going to be to get in his NBA career, which again, I think it's very hard to predict for someone like Coby White because of how consistent he has been as a player. But if I had to give him a ceiling, I would say it's 1 to 2 all-star appearances. And to be honest, even that might be a bit of a stretch. I do think Coby is still going to be a good player in this league and will end up providing more value than some Bulls fans give him credit for. But I also don't think he's going to be a future Hall of Famer like some other Bulls fans on the other side of the spectrum believe. Next up, we have got only vibes if Billy Donovan gets fired next season. The Bulls will look to hire Coach K from Duke. Well, first, I think it's highly unlikely that the Bulls fire Donovan unless the team absolutely bombs and misses the playoffs yet again next year, and they miss it badly. And that's, of course, assuming their main players stay healthy to really hone in on the fact that it is Donovan to blame rather than the injuries. But even if the Bulls have an awful season and they decide at the end of the year to let Billy Donovan go, no, they're not going to hire Mike Krzyzewski. No, Coach K is going to be a Blue Devil for life. He's not leaving Duke. That's his baby. That's his legacy. Also, even if they had the opportunity to, I would personally rather the Bulls not focus on bringing in yet another college coach. Most college coaches who come to the NBA generally don't have the same success at the professional level. I would prefer them to focus on an experienced head coach in the NBA. Next, we've got JC Imperial. Bulls would have a playoff team if they kept Carmelo Anthony. This is an interesting one because I'm sure most of you out there are probably thinking, we never had Carmelo on our team. We tried to get him in 2015, but it didn't work out and he stayed in New York. Well, actually, if you remember, Carmelo Anthony was brought over to the Bulls via a trade in the 2018-19 season right after his short stint with the Houston Rockets. Of course, Carmelo never played a game with the Bulls and was immediately waived. And this was around the time when most people thought that Carmelo's career was done and that he was going to retire from the game. Of course, the Portland Trailblazers ended up, taking a chance on him, and he actually played pretty well for them coming off the bench these past few seasons. I mean, in this past season, he averaged 13.4 points per game in 24 minutes of play. That being said, had the Bulls held on to Carmelo Anthony and not waived him, I mean, I really don't think he would have made that much of a difference for the Bulls. I mean, that was essentially a tanking team where everyone was tanking for Zion Williamson that year, and they finished with one of the worst records in the league. And even if we held on to Carmelo Anthony, even to this day, if we still had Carmelo, I think he helps the Bulls marginally on offense, and maybe we would have squeaked into the play-in this year, but Carmelo alone would not have moved the needle all that much to say definitively that the Bulls would have been a playoff team. Next up, we've got Aaron Doyle. Should the Bulls trade Patrick Williams, Sato, Aminu, and Young and picks for Lillard? No, because I don't think it's even close to being enough for the Blazers, to be honest. Really, the only enticing piece from that entire trade package would be Patrick Williams, which is a nice piece, don't get me wrong, but you're talking about trading their franchise player, a superstar, for Patrick Williams. I mean, you have to factor in that the Blazers, if they are in fact looking to trade Damian Lillard, that essentially means that they're blowing up the team and looking to rebuild. So Patrick Williams is the only piece that fits that concept of a rebuild. Otherwise, you're giving them 2 veterans and a bad contract in Aminu, and what picks are the Bulls going to trade? The only thing that they can trade for are second round picks, since the Bulls aren't able to trade any of their first round picks until 2025, since you can't trade back-to-back first round picks in a given year, and the Bulls have already given up this year's first round pick and in the year 2023. So no, this doesn't get it done. It would be nice if the Bulls could, but it would not work. Let's do one more for now, and like the last couple weeks, I'll try to get another video out later today if I can squeak it in between work. This hot take comes to us from Garrett Slingerland. It'll be at least 2 seasons until the Bulls make the playoffs. However, once they do, they'll make it past round 1. Boy, I hope it isn't going to be 2 seasons before the Bulls make the playoffs, because that means that the Lavine-Vucevic experiment utterly failed, and both players would have likely moved on with Vucevic's contract expiring 2 years from now. And 2 more seasons without making the playoffs likely means Billy Donovan would be fired. I mean, sure, that would be great if they can make it past the first round after those 2 seasons, but no, the Bulls would have much bigger problems if they missed the playoffs for yet another 2 years. You're talking about 6 straight seasons since missing the playoffs, which would be their longest drought since MJ retired, until they made it back to the playoffs in 2005. The Bulls really need to make the playoffs next year. If they don't, it would be a massive failure given the moves that the front office has made thus far, and hopefully will continue to make this offseason. Anyway, guys, I'll leave it there for now. I'll see if I can get another video out later today to cover some more of the takes. Let me know your thoughts on all of these hot takes covered in this video. And of course, always be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, as always, and I will catch you in the next one.